Imagine spending decades climbing a ladder, only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. For most of my life, I believed what nearly everyone around me believed, that success meant more money, more recognition, more achievements. I thought if I just worked harder, sacrificed more, and kept pushing forward, I'd eventually reach a place where everything would feel complete. And for a while it seemed true. Each milestone felt like proof I was on the right path, a promotion, a bigger paycheck, the approval of others. People would congratulate me. They'd say, "You're doing well." And I believed them. But there was a quiet feeling I couldn't ignore. Late at night, when everything was silent, a question would creep in. Is this really it? It's strange how you can look successful on the outside and still feel like something is missing on the inside. No one talks about that part. We're taught to chase goals, not to question them. The world tells us that happiness lives somewhere in the future, in the next achievement, the next upgrade, the next milestone. So we keep running, convinced that fulfillment is just one more step away. Years pass like this. I postponed things that truly mattered. Time with people I loved, moments of rest, dreams that didn't fit the definition of practical. I told myself I'd get to them later, after I had done enough, earned enough, proven enough. Then one day, something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic event, no lightning bolt, just a quiet realization that settled in slowly. I had been chasing a version of success that was never truly mine. I started noticing how many people around me were doing the same. Busy, accomplished, admired, yet restless. It was like we were all following a script we never questioned. Here's the hard truth I learned. Success without meaning feels strangely empty. You can reach goals and still feel unfulfilled if those goals aren't aligned with what truly matters to you. And the danger is that no one warns you, because from the outside, everything looks fine. The real turning point came when I asked myself a simple but uncomfortable question. If no one else was watching, would I still choose this path? That question changes everything, because it forces you to separate what you genuinely want from what you were taught to want. I began to redefine success, not as accumulation, but as alignment. Not as impressing others, but as living honestly. I realized that fulfillment isn't something you arrive at. It's something you create through daily choices. Looking back, I don't regret working hard, but I do wish I had understood sooner that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about how you feel while achieving it. And this realization leads to the next lesson, one that cost me more time than I'd like to admit. Because the biggest mistake I made wasn't chasing the wrong goals. It was believing I had plenty of time to figure it out. There's a dangerous word we use without thinking. Later. I'll call them later. I'll take care of my health later. I'll spend more time with family later. I'll follow my dreams later. For years, I lived under the comforting illusion that time was something I had plenty of. Later felt safe, like a promise waiting patiently in the distance. But here's what no one tells you. Later has a way of quietly disappearing. In my younger years, life felt endless. Days stretched long, and the future seemed wide open. I believed I could delay important things without consequences. There was always another opportunity, another chance, another tomorrow. Then life started moving faster. Responsibilities piled up. Work demanded more attention. Unexpected problems appeared, as they always do. Weeks turned into months, and months into years, almost without notice. One day I realized something unsettling. Many of the things I kept postponing were still waiting, but the time to do them wasn't. I remember thinking about a conversation I meant to have with someone I cared about deeply. I told myself I'd say what needed to be said when the right moment came. That moment never arrived. Opportunities don't always announce their expiration date. Sometimes they just fade quietly until you notice they're gone. The hardest lesson I learned is that time isn't just passing, it's subtracting. Every day removes possibilities you didn't act on. Every year closes certain doors, often without warning. And the regret doesn't come from what you tried and failed. It comes from what you never attempted. We assume there will always be another chance to repair relationships, pursue passions, or take care of ourselves. But life doesn't operate on assumptions. One day you wake up and realize that someday has turned into too late. This realization can feel heavy, but it's also freeing, because it forces you to confront what truly matters. I began to notice how often people wait for perfect conditions before taking action. They wait until they feel ready, until circumstances improve, until fear disappears. But perfect conditions rarely exist. If you wait for everything to align, you may spend your entire life waiting. The truth is, most meaningful things happen when you act despite uncertainty. When you move forward even when you're not fully prepared. When you choose courage over comfort. Looking back, I don't remember the risks I took with regret. I remember the times I hesitated, the conversations I avoided, the chances I ignored, the moments I let slip away. So here's what I learned after decades of experience. Later is not a guarantee, it's a gamble. And the cost of losing that gamble is measured in missed memories, unspoken words, and dreams left untouched. If there's something you've been putting off, a call, a decision, a change, consider this your reminder. The right time rarely arrives on its own. You have to create it. Because the most valuable thing you have isn't money, status, or success. It's the time you're given today. And once it's gone, no amount of wishing can bring it back. And this brings us to the next lesson. One that many people discover only after facing unexpected loss. There's a quiet assumption most of us carry through life, that the people we love will always be there. We don't say it out loud, but we live as if it's true. We assume there will always be another dinner, another phone call, another chance to say what we mean. So we get busy. We postpone visits. We rush conversations. We tell ourselves we'll make more time later, after things slow down. But life rarely slows down. I learned this lesson in a way I wish I hadn't. There came a moment when I realized that someone who had always been part of my world was suddenly not. No warning that felt sufficient. No moment that felt like proper preparation. Just an empty space where a familiar presence used to be. And with that absence came a flood of thoughts. Things I meant to say. Moments I could have appreciated more. Times I chose distraction over connection. It wasn't dramatic regret. It was quiet, persistent, and deeply personal. That's when I understood something profound. Relationships aren't maintained by intention. They're maintained by attention. It's easy to assume that strong bonds don't need effort, that history alone is enough to keep people close. But even the strongest connections need care, time, and presence. The truth is, people change, circumstances change, and sometimes life moves in directions we never anticipated. What surprised me most was how quickly ordinary moments become priceless in hindsight. A simple conversation, shared laughter, sitting together without saying much. At the time, they feel routine, almost invisible. But later you realize those were the moments that truly mattered. We often chase big achievements while overlooking the quiet beauty of being present with those who care about us. We think meaningful memories require special occasions, not realizing they're created in everyday interactions. After that realization, I began to approach relationships differently. I listened more carefully. I expressed appreciation more often. I made an effort to show up, not just physically, but emotionally, because I understood that time with people isn't something you can store for later use. Here's the lesson I wish I'd learned sooner. Don't treat people as permanent fixtures in your life. Treat them as precious opportunities. Call when you're thinking of them. Say what you feel while you still can. Make space for connection even when life feels busy. Because one day you may look back and realize that what you miss most isn't what you achieved. It's who you shared your life with. And once you see that clearly, your priorities begin to shift in ways you never expected, which leads to the next truth, one that challenges how we think about happiness itself. For most of my life, I believed happiness was something you earned, a reward waiting at the end of hard work, sacrifice, and achievement. I thought it lived in big moments, reaching goals, gaining recognition, finally feeling settled. So I kept postponing joy, telling myself I'd relax once everything was in place. But here's what I discovered. Happiness doesn't wait at the finish line. It hides in ordinary moments we often overlook. I remember a quiet morning when nothing special was happening. No deadlines, no noise, just a simple sense of calm. And it struck me how rare it was to actually notice such moments. I had spent years rushing past them, focused on what was next instead of what was now. We're taught to believe that happiness is something big and dramatic, yet most of life is made up of small, quiet experiences. A conversation that makes you smile, a peaceful walk, the comfort of familiar routines. The mistake many of us make is treating these moments as insignificant, as if real happiness is somewhere else. But over time, I realized something powerful. Happiness grows where attention goes. When you slow down and truly notice what's around you, you begin to see that contentment isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. I also learned that comparing your life to others is one of the fastest ways to lose appreciation for what you already have. The more I focused on my own path, the lighter life felt. The truth is simple, but easy to forget. You don't need perfect circumstances to feel at peace. You just need presence. Looking back, I wish I had spent less time waiting for life to feel meaningful and more time recognizing that it already was. And once you understand that, you start living differently, with more gratitude, less pressure, and a deeper sense of calm. Because the next lesson reveals something even more surprising, the freedom that comes from letting go. There comes a point in life when you realize how much energy you've spent holding on to expectations, old mistakes, opinions of others, and stories about who you're supposed to be. For years, I carried invisible weight without even noticing it. I held on to regrets, replaying moments I wished had gone differently. I worried about what people thought. I tried to control outcomes that were never truly in my control. It felt normal, until I began to question why life sometimes felt heavier than it needed to be. Then I learned something simple, yet powerful. Peace often comes not from gaining more, but from releasing what no longer serves you. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. I remember realizing that many of the things I worried about years ago no longer mattered at all. Situations that once felt urgent had faded into irrelevance. That perspective made me wonder, how much of today's stress will seem unimportant tomorrow? We spend so much time trying to control every detail of life, forgetting that uncertainty is part of the journey. The more I accepted that, the lighter I felt. One of the greatest freedoms is forgiving yourself, understanding that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. When you release self-judgment, you create space for growth. I also learned to let go of the need to please everyone. Not everyone will understand your choices, and that's okay. Living authentically matters more than meeting expectations that were never truly yours. Here's the truth I wish I had embraced earlier. You don't have to carry everything forever. When you release old burdens, resentment, fear, unrealistic standards, you make room for clarity and calm. Life becomes less about proving something and more about experiencing it fully. And in that space you discover something unexpected, a quiet sense of freedom that was available all along, waiting for you to simply let go.